development of urban agriculture in these areas, but also things like, I call it sort of vacuum suck garbage removal. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but apparently they have it in various places where you don't have to have the streets big enough to drive garbage trucks around because there's a piping system where you put garbage in and pull it through. Also renewable energy. There's very inventive uses of stormwater on the site, and I guess we'll have to see how well they do on the treatment of sewage on the site to reuse it for some purposes. The city objectives in this area are going to be based on various planning and design features, the ecological footprint, infrastructure that goes beyond carbon neutral, water conservation, etc., and a number of other features. And we'll see this is again a developing story, but certainly the aspiration is clearly there, and our hope is to actually achieve a very viable and very attractive neighborhood in the long term. Also, Ron has mentioned it earlier, we're kind of joined at the hip on this, transit and land use planning. We have developed transit-oriented development guidelines in 2011, and we are moving ahead on station area plans. This picture here is sort of my iconic picture of the zones around LRT stations. It's 200, 400, 800. Effectively, these are areas in which the ability to move quickly to these LRT stations actually dictate or make viable different forms of development. It's very good stuff. It's on the city website, transit-oriented guidelines. And if anybody's in the business or has an interest in taking a look at this sort of development and doing some analysis on it, then I suggest you might want to go have a look at it. We are embarking on station area plans. We are funded now to do 2 TOD plans per year. In areas actually, this particular LRT train is in the McCurtain-Belgravia station, and that's one of the first areas where we're going to undertake plans to increase the density around these areas. The other map there actually was a stadium station plan that has already been done. It was a pilot plan, and the first round it was very people liked it a lot. The second round nobody liked it at all. It sort of got thrown out, and then it's been brought back. So what's happening really is we're having debates with the developers who don't particularly want to have their options curtailed by the plans, and then that's an ongoing debate with other developers who are thinking perhaps it's not a bad way to get the city to invest in some of the necessary public infrastructure. Now, although we sometimes don't like to admit it, probably the largest, most significant things that were done in the MDP was to actually approve a go-ahead or provide a go-ahead for the development of area structure plans in these green areas, and these are urban growth areas. This is the next generation of development at the fringe. These are the new communities in these suburban areas. These plans were given the go-ahead, and it was a subject of hot debate because we're not quite sure how soon we need that land in practical terms. However, in giving them the go-ahead, the council imposed some restrictions on them. Of course, there is a capital region minimum density of 30 units per net residential hectare, but they're also subject to having us put in place something called a growth coordination strategy, which we're working on now, an integrated infrastructure management plan, which we're also working on, and may combine in the end, and the citywide food and agriculture strategy. So, but I think part of this whole debate about suburban communities or new communities is really for us a question of not whether or not it's a good idea. As I mentioned earlier, the the target was to have 25% of housing in the mature areas, LRT stations in downtown. Well, if you get that target, you realize 75% of your new development is still in your suburban communities. If the current rate is about 81%, so we're over 80% suburban development. And the task that we have in front of us, and this is back to my asking the last group of engineers for some help, the task in front of us is to figure out how to develop these communities in the most efficient way possible to achieve the sorts of neighborhoods that people will want to live in. Because we're back again to the point that we are a city that has no trouble creating jobs. Our challenge in the future is going to be attracting people who will fill those jobs and keep the economy going. Also, because I'm not, also what we're doing is we are undertaking with the development industry as much as we can. Sometimes they would prefer that we didn't, but we're trying to work with the development industry to explore various old and new neighborhood design ideas. I see there's some low impact development happening here, and I can see there's my urban agriculture strategy is playing out in some community and probably in some distant country, but potentially in Edmonton at some point in time. Now I can't not mention industrial areas because industrial areas are where most of our employment growth is happening. And it's happening at the fringes, the outer edges of the industrial areas as the land develops. One of the things about Edmonton suburban communities actually is that many of them are inside the growth. They're more central than the actual growth of employment in the city. And so we have an ongoing debate about suburban growth. Is that good? Well, suburban growth in many cases is catching up. We're moving out to where the employment is. So it's an interesting pattern. We are trying in our industrial areas to improve the quality of our development. I'm forever asking James to help me out with low impact development standards. I'm discovering just how difficult it is to actually have something that is better than a bioditch as part of a low impact development strategy in these areas. We are trying to move towards low impact development, eco-industrial standards, which of course involves businesses cooperating with each other, and various forms of green building standards. So I've covered all the areas that we flagged on the in the MVP map, and each of those areas, we are moving towards some form of development or change in the way we're doing things that will help us achieve the compact, sustainable, more compact. People complain when I say more sustainable, but in fact that I think this route to sustainability is going to be a very long one. But we are in fact making some headway in these areas. On the summary of this, I get to be the end. We got to the end. So I wanted to just sort of recap a bit of what we've gone through. In this city, we started out with a master plan, the way ahead, and it has sustainability goals in it. We are developing under that a set of implementation plans, but we're actually working very closely together on them. So what happens is, from the way ahead, those sustainability goals work their way into our planning and decision-making framework. And within that decision-making framework, and I'll tell you, this is hard to do. Don't let anybody kid you that trying to balance up your economic sustainability, your social sustainability, your economic sustainability, and finally your budget in a multi-plan scenario is easy. But it is something that we are endeavoring to do, and I think we're having some success at it. And in the end, what's happening is that when the infrastructure decisions, the building decisions come out at the end, we are opting for funding infrastructure funding programs that we believe will achieve a multiple set of goals. So this is where we're headed, I think it's going to be a brave and bold future. The other place I didn't mention was the River Valley, and there it is. This is my iconic picture of Edmonton. But my problem is gone through a whole slideshow, and I haven't shown you winter. We have it 6 months of the year, so I'll finish on this one instead of the River Valley. So any questions?
Yes, is that you, Gord?
Is that me? It could be me. By the way, this is, I'll remind you, this is infrastructure. This is the fabulous Mutart Conservatory, Botanical Gardens. Yes.
Can you comment on what Jim mentioned at the beginning about the integration of each of the way we grow, breathe, etc.?
Yeah.
What mechanics did the city put in place to work on those integrations?
Well, the first bit was in fact setting up the council itself created the way ahead framework, and so that was created as an overriding set of goals, objectives, and directions. The first out of the blocks was the MVP and the way we grow and the way we move, and this was actually a really interesting exercise in getting the planners and the engineers, speaking the same language. But it was a very tight planning team that developed or that looked very carefully at things that we should move ahead on. For example, it was jointly decided that we were targeting very actively transit and land use planning, which meant our next steps began to move into the development of the TMD guidelines, as well as the walkability policy. The way we live came along. I think a little after, but we also worked with the planning team on that to align the various policies that were in there. The way we green then joined in. So in fact, we had these plans proceeding through with the planning teams working together as much as possible. Rhonda got her plan approved the way we move approved a year before the way we go, because we had the world's longest public hearing, but that was over approved in May. So that's the first step. That's just the first step. Once you've done that, what you have to do is you then have to start using these policies as the basis for budget decisions and program decisions, and as the basis for creating project teams like the Complete Streets team, which is we have neighborhood design guidelines, which is working with the transportation crew and other departments, and we also have Complete Streets, which is another combination of teams working together. So it really is a lot of people working together, and it really is making budget decisions, particularly on a broad section of criteria.